Good morning, and thank you for coming in. Happy holidays to you.
To you as well.
Your father has now been impeached. He is now only the third U.S. president to go through this. Yeah. What has been the impact? Has he made peace with it?
He's energized, as are 63 million plus voters who elected him to office. This is historic, as you note, in many ways, including the fact that it is the first purely partisan impeachment. In fact, the only thing bipartisan was the vote against proceeding forward, which several Democrats came along to reject the articles, both that were introduced and that voted against last night's vote. So, you know, what's, I think, deeply unfortunate and disappointing is the amount of work that we could be doing to further the shared goals that we have and that the American people want us to be finding common ground on. If you think about this past week and what has been accomplished by this administration, despite unprecedented resistance and a climate of just tremendous raw politics, it's been remarkable, from the passage of the defense bill, which secured for millions of Americans paid family leave, to the creation of Space Force, to the largest pay raise for our service members in a decade. That, plus USMCA, plus Tier 1 of the US-China trade deal, it is incredible. We passed permanent funding for HBCUs. Something that people have, historically black colleges, something that people have been trying to get done for ages. The amount of work that we've accomplished in a very short period of time is just remarkable. And that's where our focus is. That's where our priorities are leading us to deliver on promise after promise.
I'm surprised to hear you say energized, because when I read the letter that your father sent to Speaker Pelosi, he seemed angry. And in fact, he wrote, "You do not know, nor do you care, the great damage and hurt you've inflicted upon wonderful and loving members of my family." Was that a reference to you?
I don't think the words are mutually exclusive. You can be angry at a process that is unjust, and I think you heard from all the Republicans in the House yesterday, their anger, their disbelief that this process was proceeding forward, when just several months ago, the Speaker herself said she would not advance impeachment without bipartisan agreement and consent. So there can be anger at the opportunity cost to the Americans we're all here serving, and what could have gotten done, angry at the waste of time, angry at the collateral damage, but it's still energizing, and it focuses you on, really, and draws into relief the stark contrast in priorities between Republicans and Democrats today. That could change in the future, but today we are focused on delivering historic wins. And sadly, we can't define the priorities of anyone but ourselves. So we know what the White House is committed to doing, and we are delivering time after time.
When he says damage and hurt, what is your dad's mood right now? I mean, he's talking about hurt to your family. Is that the way you feel it? Do you feel it in a personal way?
Well, I think you saw his mood last night, and so did everyone watching.
At the rally,
he said it didn't even feel like he was being impeached. There is tremendous energy on his side. Look, it is pretty unprecedented that support for impeachment has decreased over time as more information was presented to the American people. It's decreased, not increased. So with all of this time spent, with all of these witnesses who didn't have firsthand knowledge, with all of these people that have been paraded in front of the American people, support for this action has decreased. So, you know, I think he sees it for what it is, which is really just raw partisan politics.
You are an advisor to your dad.
Yes.
It looks like this impeachment will head towards, or at least it's supposed to head towards, a Senate trial. Do you advise him on that? Do you think that this should be a trial with witnesses and new evidence?
I leave that to the lawyers in terms of procedurally how to move forward.
You haven't given your own advice?
I give him my perspective and opinion, but many people are very well informed about process and how to move forward, and I would defer to them on that.
In your opinion, do you think he's getting good counsel from Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney?
I know Rudy Giuliani in a very different context as one of the greatest mayors in the history of this country and a real hero in New York. So that is the experience I've had with Rudy for a very long period of time. He's smart and thoughtful and a real warrior, and was a great mayor.
I ask you about that because, of course, it was his actions in Ukraine and the investigation and his continued claim that he is working on behalf of your father on these projects. And it's created a lot of news and new storylines that the White House has had to respond to that have only complicated, in many ways, moving on.
That's your assessment. So I don't know that I want to validate that comment. It is what it is. We're here. More than 50% of America thinks that we shouldn't be in this position and that the president shouldn't have been impeached. And we have the agreement of every single Republican member of Congress and a handful of Democrats as well. So the facts are there for the American people to assess and determine themselves.
Now, you have found an area of agreement with Speaker Pelosi, who championed paid family leave. You worked to get Republicans on board with what just ended up in the NDAA, which is to guarantee government workers 12 weeks of paid leave.
This has been years of discussion and education on the merits of paid family leave, grounded in conservative values of work and of family. And the reality is the world has changed, and it's changed quickly. Today, women make up 47% of the workforce, yet we provide the vast majority of unpaid care for children and of course, adult dependents. And it is not acceptable that in America today, 1 in 4 women go back to work 2 weeks after having a child. It's just not acceptable. We can't tell the private sector to step up and to offer these critical benefits to their employees and not be willing to do it ourselves. And it's taken time. It's been the course of 2.5 years of building out coalitions of support for this policy. But we have made more progress on paid family leave than in the 25 years since the Family and Medical Leave Act was passed. So you not only have this, and this is huge, it's a huge step forward in providing paid leave to all Americans, which is our ultimate objective, but we also, as part of tax reform, approved the first ever tax credit to employers offering leave to their employees making under $72,000 a year, which are the people that are very, very unlikely to receive it. So incentivizing employers to step forward.
How did you get the Republican caucus to support these things? Because there has been Republican opposition to any kind of government mandate.
This has been, as I said, the accumulation of several years of discussion. When I first came to Washington, I was surprised at how few Democrats had taken their argument for the merit of paid leave to their colleagues across the aisle. So it really was starting from the beginning and talking about this policy and framing it in different terms. So Republicans didn't want a payroll tax increase that disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable. So what are new solutions? We proposed the first ever bipartisan, bicameral plan that would allow people the flexibility to determine if they want to pull forward their child tax credit. And then pay it back over 10 years. And by the way, paying it back over 10 years, they'd still receive an annual distribution that is dramatically higher than what they received prior to us passing tax reform.
Are you, though, just to clarify that, are you endorsing any of those bills?
So the way I have approached this from inception is the president has made very clear he thinks that this is critical policy. And now we are working with members on both sides of the aisle to see who has the right policy to move forward and to be able to garner the votes to pass this into law.
And that could be a Democratic-led bill, but you would still support it.
It could be. It definitely could be. I think the option that has been put out there by the Democrats, without even opining on the policy of it, it has sat there since 2012, has never been scored, has never received the endorsement of a president, including President Obama, and has never received bipartisan support from colleagues in the Senate. So the way I look at it is the debate had grown stale. If we want to deliver relief to working parents who need this, we need to come up with new, fresh solutions. So we've been working with Republicans, with Democrats on proposing alternatives. And what has become incredible is that people aren't debating anymore whether or not paid family leave is good policy. They're debating what's the best policy.
But what did just become law,
Yes.
just to clarify for people who don't follow this the way you do, and what was tucked inside the NDAA is 12 weeks of leave for people who either gave birth, or a woman or her partner, male or female, or if they adopted or
parent.
a foster care
Correct.
caregiver. And with that, though, this was tucked inside in a way that some Republican senators said they didn't get to fully vet this, and they have highlighted some flaws in it that the FAA or the TSA or people who work at the VA, the veterans agencies, won't receive full benefits. Can you guarantee for all government workers that that will be fixed, that they will all receive 12 weeks?
The TSA is a flaw that applies to basically every benefit that members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have been working to fix. So it's not specific to this particular benefit. This applies to the full federal workforce, understanding that that is a meaningful glitch that has applied to many, many things for many, many years and that we're working to fix.
Will contractors get to receive the benefits? I think 4 out of 10 people who work for the government are contractors.
It applies to our workforce and under the same provision that all other benefits are administered. So it's consistent with that.
But you would like to expand it?
Oh, our goal is to ensure that paid leave is available to all Americans. But we're putting forth new solutions. A payroll tax increase is not going to be passed into law anytime in the near future. So what are the other options? That's why the Cassidy-Sinema bill is so interesting. It's bipartisan, co-sponsors in the House, in the Senate, and it provides people with flexibility. It is not a mandate on business. Oftentimes, small business cannot afford the mandate. So it creates flexibility and discretion for the benefit of the person who ultimately wants to use it.
How do you get a private business? You were in the private sector. You didn't have a policy yourself in the beginning, but now you support it. How do you ask?
Well, in my own business, after I had employees, I did. So I think once the fourth person I hired was pregnant when I hired her, so we put a policy in place for her. So everyone who's ever had a baby at one of my companies has had access to leave. So that, that's something I recognize as critically important. But I do think elevating awareness around the benefits to attracting and retaining the best talent this country has to offer. It is in companies' self-interest to do this, and that's why we've seen employers increasingly adopt paid leave. I had a conversation with Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, about how important this policy was in the first year of the administration. Walmart adopted and expanded upon their parental leave policies following tax reform. I got a call from Doug right after they announced the policy change, and he said, it was the most popular thing we did, even more than raising our wage, offering that benefit, because it's incredibly valuable to families. But it is important to note that thinking about caring for the next generation, the most important resource in this country. And of course, the parents, it doesn't stop at 12 weeks.
Whenever anyone hears you talk about the importance of being with your children, they also think about your personal, and you were vocal in your opposition to the family separation policy when it came to immigration
Yes.
and the U.S. border. You said that was a low point for you.
Correct.
We went and looked, and Homeland Security says there are still around 900 children who remain separated from their families. Is that something you continue to remain engaged on when it comes to immigration?
Well, immigration is not part of my portfolio. Obviously, I think everyone should be engaged, and the full force of the U.S. government is committed to this effort to border security, to protecting the most vulnerable. That includes those being trafficked across our border, which this president has committed to countering and combating human trafficking in an incredibly comprehensive, aggressive way. So the full United States government has been focused on this issue, starting with the president.
Are you planning, because I know your father's facing re-election, if he does win, are you going to stay here in Washington? Do you plan to be part of the administration?
I am driven, first and foremost, by my kids and their happiness. So that's always going to be my top priority, and that's my decisions will always be flexible enough to ensure that their needs are being considered first and foremost. So they will really drive that answer for me. I think for me, I came down here, it's about the impact. It's about being able to deliver for the forgotten men and women that I met over the course of 2 years as I campaigned around this country, and over the last 2.5 years as I've traveled to almost every state in this nation. It's about providing pathways to opportunity. Our policies have created a pro-growth environment, whether it's tax reform, deregulation, elements like the child tax credit that have afforded parents the relief they need to make the investment that's so important in their families.
I hear you say unfinished business, and it makes me think you want to keep working.
Oh, it's
here.
always unfinished. I mean, we've done so much, but it's not enough yet. One of the things I've been most proud of is some of the work we've done around catalyzing the private sector to step up and invest in the skills and potential of American workers across the nation. 14 million Americans will benefit from the pledges of over 350 companies to invest in their skills. It is incredible. That's 14 million lives improved. When you look at the stats about the prosperity that has been created by this president, one of the statistics out of so many that really just excites me and drives me each and every day is the fact that over the past year, of all the new jobs created, and 7 million jobs have been created since the president took office, of all the new jobs created, 43% of them were secured by Americans on the sideline of our economy. Not even those that are unemployed, but those who had been completely marginalized, who are now coming back into the workforce and being taught the skills they need, not only just to secure a job in this hot economy, but to ultimately transition into a career.
Does it make you want to run for office yourself?
Oh gosh, for me, it's the politics is truthfully less interesting. The policy and the impact of lifting communities and changing people's lives, and the stories I've heard from the people I've met across this nation are just amazing, and it gives you so much hope. So even in this combative climate where people are just killing each other and it's just pure partisan raw politics, there is so much positivity and there's so much hope. And the stories I could share with you when we have longer about the policies we've put in place and how that's impacted American families, whether it's criminal justice reform and the impact that that's made on communities across the nation, and that hope of a second chance, to workforce development and job training, to childcare affordability. We can't underappreciate the fact that we've increased the amount we're spending by 50%, so that parents aren't having to choose to lose their job because they can't afford high quality childcare. So it's really energizing, and I'm deeply passionate. But you know, the day I walk into the West Wing and I don't feel a shiver up my spine is the day I've been here too long. And I still, every day, feel a tremendous humbling and sense of privilege that I'm able to do the work that I came to Washington to do, that the president's empowered me, and I feel just incredibly grateful to be able to give back to a country that's given me so much, and I'm doing my very best.
Ivanka Trump, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.